This is Out of the Box with your host, Jonathan Clark. Out of the Box, Sunday nights at 9 on Q1043.
Well, he's one of my favorite guitar players ever. He has a new book out now called Marr's Guitars. Right here. Here it is. It's a new book featuring many of his absolutely incredible guitar collection and stories to go along with each guitar. And then there's this. We got Spirit Power, the best of Johnny Marr, a compilation of songs of Johnny's first 10 years as a solo artist featuring two brand new songs, Somewhere and The Answer. Somewhere I've been playing on this show. Some book signings and Q&As happening in the States as well as in the UK. And the Johnny Marr Orchestra. We got to talk about that. 2 hometown shows in Manchester coming up, too. All the info right now, johnnymarr.com. Johnny, the book is so incredible. I'm salivating as a frustrated guitar player looking at your guitar collection. The photography of the instruments is so beautiful. The stories about how these guitars came into your life. Hans Zimmer, the great composer, does the foreword in the book. And I'm just going to, before you start talking to me, I want to read the foreword of the book. The electric guitar is the closest thing to true magic created by humanity that I can think of. Not much more than a plank of wood, 6 strings slung across the neck and body, a few magnets to pick up the vibrations in the strings, and like nothing else in our world, the elegant simplicity of this design exposes and amplifies everything about the player's individuality. The guitar is an amplifier for the emotional and psychological fingerprints of the soul. If you want to know something about someone, listen to how they play. I mean, that is an incredible foreword by your pal Hans.
Yeah, he's a clever guy. He's a soulful guy as well, which you can tell from that. I mean, I was very fortunate. I just asked him, can you do me a favour? And then he produced that. The foreword for the book's beautiful. I have to say, that the book, I was right across it, from looking down the viewfinder when Pat was taking these amazing photographs to being involved in all the shoots and the scheduling of the shoots and the layout and all of this. But I've had a couple of my mates around me involved in it, and I'm very fortunate to have very, very clever and mates who.
I've never seen guitars shot like that.
No, look, the thing about it was that I know you're a guitar freak. The actual idea of the book came about. It wasn't that I wanted to do a book about my guitar collection. I wanted to do a book of Pat Graham's photographs. That was the thing.
Okay.
And then use my guitars as source material, because Pat Graham's just, no one takes photographs like Pat, and he's known for these really uber close-up shots. He kind of pioneered that, certainly in music anyway. So the deal is with Pat, if you I've known this for years now, if you ask him to take a photograph of one of your guitars, this picture comes back that is, you think, what is that? Is that the Serengeti, or is that some industrial landscape in Ohio at dawn or something? And he says, oh well, I kind of got distracted by the rust on the screws on the bridge there, and so he takes these micro lenses and then blows them up. So the inspiration for the book was I wanted to do an entire art book, coffee table book as they're known, full of Pat's abstract photographs, but just using my guitars. And then that was the original idea. And then the second inspiration I had was that when I was a little kid, and I'd got my pals who were a bit more middle class than me. I grew up in a very working class household. My friends, their parents would sometimes have the Zen Book of Gardens, or the Zen Book of English Gardens, or the Mercedes book, or whatever. And I would, or architecture books. So then with my book, quite early in the process, I thought, it'd be really good to have a book that's so beautiful that people who don't normally would never have a guitar book in the house, wouldn't think of it, would have this book because it's so beautiful. So that was really that's what gave me the inspiration to really run with this idea. And then in the process of doing it, a whole load of things came out. Frankly, I didn't know that. I genuinely didn't know that there was going to be so many stories attached to these guitars, and I've forgotten that I loaned Radiohead some guitars, and then Ed O'Brien tells this beautiful story, and then obviously there's the guitars that Noel Gallagher used in Oasis, and then there's Franz Ferdinand and Nile Rodgers giving me these guitars. I genuinely didn't really see that coming until I got into the photo shoots and pulling these guitars out of cases, and all these stories started coming to me. So the book then has become this story of certainly my career, and pretty much really story of my life, and in a way that my autobiography didn't cover.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. So.
It's funny because Brian Johnson of AC/DC put out a book similar to this, and he did it with cars. He's a car fanatic. Brian Johnson of AC/DC.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
And he's like, okay, well, I remember that car. What was happening in my life then? And he did a similar thing,
Right.
like way back in the day.
It's yeah. Well, I mean, with guitars, as some people might imagine, you get so attached to moments because you're doing something emotional, like you're making music.
Yeah.
I mean, when I say emotional, that doesn't mean necessarily it has to be sad. So when I wrote Nowhere Fast on this Epiphone Casino for the Meat Is Murder album, I remember exactly what I was doing, where I was. It was a Friday night in Earl's Court. The band was taking off. Life was amazing, and I'd got this guitar because the Hollies and the Beatles and the beat groups, the Kinks and all of that, and the Smiths were doing well, so I just earned enough money, and I went, well, okay, again, being working class, I went, well, if I buy this guitar, I've got to write a song on it.
You got to pay for it.
So it was very emotional, but the song is really upbeat. And when I was making the book, shooting all these guitars technically is actually very difficult, because you don't want to get all these reflections. You don't want to be seeing the photographer in the reflection. The lighting's got to be right. It can't change the way when you look at the photo, the color of the guitar has to be right. I could go on, but so every night of these long, exhaustive shoots, which took a couple of weeks, I would come home and I'd say to Angie, my wife, I'd be like, "Wow, do you remember when? Do you remember when we went to Rome and then I came back and and I bought that Strat and I remember I did this on it," and she was like, and it was really it really made me super reflective in a way that I would never have. I just didn't anticipate.
I think that and maybe it's easy to recall those memories because when you come up with a riff or write a complete song, that's like a lightning bolt. That's like electricity coming through your brain, and it like burns into you because those are important moments.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, that's right.
And I've always said this about guitars, that guitars to me, I mean, mostly electric guitars. Electric guitars are sort of like modern art. You know what I mean? They're kind of like a Chevy Corvette from the early 60s, or a Mustang, or a vintage Ferrari or something. But they're so beautiful to look at, even if you don't play them or drive them. You want to just like look at them and have them around,
Oh, absolutely. In terms of design, this might sound obvious, but it's incredible that shapes, designs that happened in the 1950s mostly have never been improved upon, and any deviations are really just that. They're just deviations.
Exactly.
From the Les Paul, the Telecaster, the Strat. They really got it absolutely right the first time round.
Yeah.
And they signify the times now. You can pick any new band coming out of Chicago or London or wherever in the world, and to that band, boy or girl in that garage, their guitar is representing 2023.
Yeah,
it
totally.
I mean, in their mind, they may be going, "Oh, I got this because Dave Grohl's got one, or Kurt Cobain got one, or Johnny Marr got one, or whatever." That's a whole other thing why people are attracted to certain guitars. It's almost entirely because you want to copy your hero, right?
Of course.
It's great.
Yeah.
So that's a whole other thing. I mean, on that point, the making of this book again because I found myself having these conversations with Martin Kelly, who's a real guitar expert. All of these things we're talking about now, these layers and layers of why guitars are the way they are. That's something that happened in the process of making the book. That is there's about, say, 4 layers of this book. One, as I've said, is the art coffee table book, and then there's the just my guitar collection, and then there's the stories of New Order using my Les Paul, Bernard on Regret, or this one that I use on Pet Shop Boys, or Nile Rodgers giving me one. I mean, when I see it all in a book, I kind of go, that's crazy, right? But there's also, in the conversation with Martin, because he really knows his stuff, and
he interviews you in the book.
Yeah, and when we kept going back and doing more and more interviews, because not to get more information, why I wanted for the interview, and when you hear me speak in the book, it's a bit of a crazy idea, but we kept going back and doing more and editing and do it until it felt like you're on a couch and you're opening the book, whether you know about guitars or not, and I'm sat next to you on the couch, and you say to me, why do guitar players like that? What do you mean by that? So it had to be really like a conversation. So sometimes I had too much information, and other times I was saying stuff that only guitar nerds would know. So we kept going back and doing more. So the interview bit and the text, in the making of it sounding like a simplistic conversation in your ear, that took so much time.
Yeah.
And it was like a day job for me. I keep rereading it. I go, it sounds like an article, or it sounds like it's in a magazine. So it came out now really sounding like a conversation, and these things that we're talking about, I think are covered. One of the reasons I'm so proud of the book, they're covered in a way that people who like guitars will recognise, and people who don't know about guitars will find interesting, I hope.
Oh, absolutely. And guitar players in the know, when they hear your name, Johnny Marr, they think of the Fender Jaguar, maybe a Rickenbacker.
Yeah.
But there's so many more in this book. But tell us about give me like 2 or 3 guitars that you wrote some of your most popular or most recognizable songs on that come to mind, like right off the top of your head.
Well, because you just mentioned a moment, I thought what you just said was really spot on about, because music happens in a moment like a lightning bolt. And, well, Dashboard by Modest Mouse, that was about 5 seconds, where Isaac Brock, from the singer in Modest Mouse, who I'd never met before that night, I'd only met him about 2 hours before. And when I went to Portland, Oregon, 2005, and he just literally leaned into my face and said, "Have you got any riffs?" And because I'd picked up this Jaguar, which was his, and just minutes before I'd picked it up, and I had a chord change, but the moment that guitar made me play this riff immediately, which was Dashboard. And when you hear the start of Dashboard, what you hear is exactly what happened, except there's a kick drum in the background going dum dum. But you hear me play this riff on that Jaguar, and then you hear Isaac sing exactly what he improvised. He didn't go away for a week and come up with the lyrics. He sang, "Well, it could have been, should have been, worse than you will ever know." And I was like, what is happening?
Yeah. Lightning bolt again.
So, and then the thing about that as well, that holding of that guitar and coming up with that riff, I won't say it changed my life, but it catapulted me into where I am now. In that the next 15 years, I ended up using Jaguars exclusively, and the book ends with a photograph of my most recent Jaguar, but me playing it with the orchestra doing the James Bond theme. And that's all because of that 4 seconds with Isaac.
Wow.
And that he had it. Yeah, so Dashboard is one. And then I guess I'm glad that for people who know about guitars, I explain in the book about the red 1985 Les Paul that I bought in 85 to do the Meat Is Murder album. I thought, I'm going to treat myself, and also I want something that's feels new to do a new record. And I literally bought it the day before we started recording the Meat Is Murder album. I wrote a whole load of stuff on that, but there's a song called That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore, which has always remained one of my favourites. I think all the band did such a great job on that, and people would never imagine that I wrote it on a Les Paul, even guitar freaks, because, as you know, you have these really associative memories.
Oh yeah.
So when people think of Les Pauls, they think, they'll think maybe Slash via Joe Perry via Jimmy Page. I mean, that's been very simplistic.
Dwayne Allman, you know.
Yeah. And but so to hear that kind of music coming out of an English indie band played on Les Paul is surprising to some people. So yeah, I'd say those two are really distinctive, but there's a whole load of them in the book.
Your friend Noel Gallagher also contributed to the book as well. They were just starting out when you and you told me this story about hearing Liam in a club, and but you lent them some guitars at some point, right?
Yeah. What happened with Noel was that I'd met Noel first. Seen Liam around town. I had no idea. I didn't even know he was in a band, but I didn't know he was Noel's brother. My brother knew Noel, and I met Noel, and he was a young guy starting out with a band who I hadn't yet heard when I met him. We went and had a cup of tea because my brother said he's a really cool fella, and he was a young guy who is much like he is now. Me and him clicked. I liked him. I could tell he was on a mission. And then they invited me to go and see his band. They just call themselves Oasis, and it would be hard to exaggerate how few people were there. I know there was more than 7, but there was definitely not 20.
Right.
And they were all the band's friends. So maybe, let's say there was 14 people there, and they went on at 7 p.m. It was still bright outside.
Early, yeah.
And I watched them anyway. He called me either the next day or a couple of days later and said, "What do you think?" And I said to him, "Well, you take it's great. I loved it, fantastic, well done." But he seemed like he wanted some constructive criticism. So I just said, "Well, you take a long time tuning up before numbers, and especially when there's only like 11 people there, right?"
Right.
So I said, you need another guitar. Quite rightly, he said to me, "Well, that's okay for you to say, Johnny Marr, right?" And so I put the phone down and I thought, "Oh, well, okay, he needs a couple of guitars, right?" So I loaned him a couple of guitars. One was a Les Paul that I used a lot in the Smiths that I got from the Who, and John Entwistle. It was owned by John Entwistle, but it was a Who guitar, and so I sent that over to him, and it blew his mind. And then very soon after that, I saw him using it, and so I just said, "Keep it." It's like no one had any idea that Oasis. It wasn't because I thought these guys are going to conquer the world and write a song that everyone in America knows.
Right. Yeah.
I just maybe Noel thought that.
Yeah.
And he was right, but
he was on a mission.
I could do it, and I was able to do it, and so I gave him that guitar, and then shortly afterwards it got damaged, so I gave him another one to replace it. And I know it sounds quite extreme, but I'm glad I did. I could do it, and I won't say it was no big deal, but I respected him and I liked him, and he was my pal. So
yeah,
and I had loads of guitars, so why not?
Speaking of which, I will ask what everyone asks you in the book. You say you think you have 132 guitars, but it could be less, it could be more. Maybe it's more.
It's probably a little more. Maybe
okay.
Maybe stick at maybe about 10 on top of that. I think I've acquired them over the years. Look, I'm a working class person, and I've done very, very well, but I've spent nearly everything I've made I've spent on guitars, and they were a lot cheaper over the years when I was buying them. Yeah.
And legend has it that Keith Richards actually has an entire building for his guitars somewhere in Manhattan. I don't know if that's true, but you are certainly approaching that.
I think also, with this, I think now that I've come out and I'm talking about it, I only got a copy of the actual copy of the book about 4 weeks ago, and I've been so busy. I've been doing some shows and stuff, and it's only now that I'm kind of discussing it that it's occurred to me that and the doing the best of has happened at a certain point in my life, where there's no doubt about it. It's made me, I am reflecting. I didn't know that. I didn't think, oh, okay, I'm getting to a certain age. I need to take stock, but it's obviously happened.
Yeah.
And again, coming from being a kid who really pleaded for a little toy guitar when I was 5, and then can remember really vividly when my dad bought me one that was a real one when I was 8, going with him to get it on this dark Saturday evening in Manchester. To have this book now, I kind of go, what the hell happened?
But that first guitar that was like a decent guitar, that is a moment. I remember when it happened to me. It was a Gibson SG.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, oh my, this is the one that Pete Townsend played live at Lee, and Dwayne Allman played slide on, and it goes through your head. Your work with Hans Zimmer is pretty amazing. Most recently, is it an Oscar nomination or a win for No Time to Die or something? Tell me.
Yeah, the song Billie Eilish, No Time to Die, won an Oscar, yeah.
And you played guitar on that?
Yeah.
Wow. Fantastic.
Yeah. And that was something else. I mean, it's all on Billy and Phineas. They wrote that song, and they quite rightly were smart enough to keep the integrity of the song. It sounds like a Billie Eilish record.
Yeah.
I just had to do the token Bond guitar on it, which was an absolute privilege. What I did was really nothing, but I'm glad. I'm glad I got to use my Jag on that. The thing about it is that certainly in England, because it's such the James Bond, growing up in the 60s and 70s, particularly in England, and the 80s, but James Bond is an institution.
Oh, yeah.
An absolute institution in England. So it being an institution when you grow up in England, people who, back when I was a kid, if you played the guitar even just for a minute, almost everybody learned down, 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 down.
Yes, totally.
They learn. This is in the 70s, mid 70s. You learn Satisfaction. You learn down, 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 and so this is single string things, and then you learn the James Bond theme. But the point is that it's because it was so easy and so recognisable. Hey, I've got a tune. But when I came to 50 years later, when I came to actually play it with the orchestra, one of the simplest riffs that's ever been known to man, right when I was on the spot there, I just thought, not now, Johnny. Please, do not talk about overthinking it, because it's so simple, and and it's such a big deal. All the orchestra are playing, and I'm about to play the Bond theme. It's every young kid's dream in my day. And I was thinking, do not overthink this, man. It turned out okay, but I was like, if you screw this up, man, you're just such an idiot.
Well, your relationship with Hans started with Inception, right? Like almost 10 years ago, or whatever that was. More than 10 years ago, yeah.
Yeah, that was a beautiful thing. That mostly because the music was beautiful. I mean, our friendship is really tight. I was speaking to him this morning, and he's an amazing guy, and we're really close. But it started with Inception, and that was the start of me using double necks, Gibson.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I used the double neck for Inception because I just couldn't get the sound I wanted, and I needed a 12-string, and it was like 1:30 a.m., and it was just someone in the building had one from the 60s that they didn't even use it. They just kind of inherited it.
Crazy.
And someone said in the building, "Oh, I know one of the other composers has got a double neck." And I went, "Oh, well, if it, as long as it works."
Yeah.
And then I almost always use double necks for in the movies now.
Right. Johnny Marr is with us. Of course, we've got the book, Marr's Guitars, and a new best of called Spirit Power, the best of Johnny Marr. 10 years goes by quick, huh?
Doesn't it just? Yeah.
And you got 2 new songs on there, Somewhere, which I am playing on this show, and also The Answer. So the 2 new songs on Spirit Power, the best of Johnny Marr, does this mean 2024 a full new Johnny Marr album?
Well, we've got a lot of shows planned, including, I hope, a tour in the United States at the end of the summer. Maybe it'll go into the fall, but we're touring a lot next year, and I really get into the weeds when I record. Like, I demo everything myself before I even bring it to the band. So unfortunately for me, I say unfortunately because for me the greatest thing is making new music. I got a feeling that an album, a full record, won't be out until the following year if everything goes to plan. If it doesn't go to plan, it will come out earlier.
Okay.
Because that's what I tend to do. That's my kind of go in the studio and start writing a bunch of songs, and then get the band in and drive everybody nuts making a record.
Going into the Crazy Face Factory.
Yeah.
Is that a play on Andy Warhol or something? Or
no? What happened there was the Smiths' original manager, Joe Moss, had a factory called Crazy Face.
Oh, okay.
Because he was a Van Morrison freak. So Crazy Face is a Van Morrison song, and he was a Van Morrison. But as a tribute to Joe, who was my manager for years, when I got my studio, I just called it the Crazy Face Factory. Yeah.
Fantastic. Tell me about Johnny Marr Orchestra. Have you ever played with an orchestra in a live setting before? Because you're doing this with 2 hometown shows in Manchester at the end of the year.
I haven't in this way. I've played with orchestras with Hans Zimmer, because I've toured with Hans, and I had a really amazing experience playing with Pet Shop Boys in the orchestra. We did a couple of gigs, which was really great. So I know about the technicalities of it, but actually an orchestra behind me singing and me playing my songs, no. And that's going to be, it's going to be a challenge and something I want to really enjoy. If it goes well, maybe we'll do it somewhere else. But it's a big undertaking for me and my band. But that's why you do this, isn't it? To challenges.
Yeah. Well, that's something I would love to see in a beautiful place in New York City.
Yeah.
Johnny Marr is with us. All the info on JohnnyMarr.com. The new book, Marr's Guitars. Everyone go at it. It's right in time for Christmas, so go and get it. And then you got Spirit Power, the best of Johnny Marr, with all his great songs from the last 10 years of his solo career. Johnny, travel safe. Best of luck. Thank you for coming by as usual. We could talk for hours and hours and hours, man. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's become a little bit of a tradition now, isn't it? Like, it's always a pleasure. I appreciate it. And I'll see you again.
Yes, thank you.
Thanks very much.
This is Out of the Box with your host, Jonathan Clark. Out of the Box, Sunday nights at 9 on Q1043.